The murder case against an unlicensed security guard protecting a 9 News crew is dropped. Mesa County's election clerk can leave jail as long as she doesn't go near elections or leave Colorado. She's running for Secretary of State, raising the question, can you hold office from prison? We're getting some feedback on how XL's daytime rate hike will impact people who work from home. And she was an MSU Denver professor before the campus existed. As she heads for retirement, lessons for all of us from a half-century in the classroom. All that is next. Denver prosecutors are dropping the murder case against an unlicensed security guard who was protecting a 9 News crew on the day that he shot and killed a man in 2020. Matthew Doloff had insisted that that shooting was self-defense. Shooting was seen on video. We're going to stop that video before the shots fired. I want to warn you that some of the images from that day may be difficult for some to watch. Pro-police protester Lee Keltner was shot and killed outside the Denver Art Museum back on October 10th, 2020. Spokesperson for the Denver DA's office said today that they, quote-unquote, fully considered the facts and circumstances and felt that they were not able to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. 9 News legal analyst Scott Robinson says dismissing charges in a case like this at this late stage is unusual.
You would think that the DA's office would have made this kind of charging decision a year and a half ago. No matter what the reasons for, the dismissal of a second-degree murder charge a year and a half after the charges were filed in the absence of new evidence would be highly unusual. And there's got to be a reason why it was done by the prosecutor's office now.
We may learn more when this formally happens at a hearing on the 21st. Keltner was taking part in one of 2 competing rallies happening in Denver that day. The security guard, Doloff, was contracted by 9 News through the security company Pinkerton. 9 News management released a statement at the time saying that during the summer of 2020, 9 News had been contracting with private security to accompany journalists covering protests. Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters has been ordered not to leave the state without permission. She and her deputy clerk, Belinda Nisley, face charges for their alleged role in a breach of the county's election software. They're accused of copying the hard drives from the county's election machines in an unsuccessful attempt to find proof of a rigged election. Both women appeared in court this afternoon. Peters faces 77 felony charges and 3 misdemeanors, including attempting to influence a public servant, criminal impersonation, and ID theft. Her bond was lowered today from a $500,000 cash bail to $250,000 cash or surety. She's been ordered to surrender her passport, and she has to get permission to travel outside the state. She can't contact her deputy or other court or clerk employees, and she's not allowed at work. Nice's bond was reduced from $500,000 cash down to $10,000 PR bond. While she's out on bond, she can't have contact with Clerk Peters or anybody else in their office. Both women are coming back to court in May. Can you be Secretary of State from prison? Asking for a state. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger found that Tina Peters, candidate for Secretary of State, cannot be disqualified from running for office, conviction or not. But if she won and ends up getting convicted, well, that's where things get interesting.
The qualifications to run for Colorado Secretary of State are pretty basic. You have to be at least 25 years old, live in Colorado for 2 years before the election, and be a U.S. citizen. That's it. You can still run if you are charged or convicted of crimes, like election-related offenses.
We have age requirements, we have residency requirements, there are campaign finance requirements while you're running for office. So to me, this is just another part of the requirement list.
Former Denver elections director Amber McReynolds points out the rules to be an election judge are stricter than Colorado Secretary of State.
Election judges can never be convicted of election fraud, any other election offense or fraud.
Election judges are the ones who verify ballot signatures and review ballots if there is a question of which choice was marked. But here is what state law says about being convicted of a felony and holding public office. Every person convicted of a felony shall be disqualified from holding any office of honor, trust, or profit. So is Colorado Secretary of State an office of honor, trust, or profit?
I would say definitely trust. And they also handle the business licensing fees in terms of money that comes into the state.
The statute is clear that if you are currently serving a sentence or you are in confinement for a felony, you cannot hold public office.
Jessica Smith is a constitutional law partner at her law firm. We wanted to know if Tina Peters, who is trying to be the Republican candidate for Colorado Secretary of State, could still run if she were to be convicted during her campaign.
And it doesn't list no felonies as one of the qualifications. So yes, you could continue to run for public office having been convicted.
And changing that, if the state wanted to, could be done by lawmakers.
If someone is unqualified from serving, they should also, by extension, be unqualified from running.
I know we're talking about what ifs here, but the question exists. What if Peters is the Republican nominee for Colorado Secretary of State? She could be elected while facing charges. And then if convicted and serving a sentence, prison or probation, she would then be barred by state law and thus create a vacancy, which would then give the governor the power to appoint a replacement.
I feel like this should be a lot more cut and dried for people, Marshall. I mean, we're not Illinois where like every politician is either in jail or will be in jail, but like it could be a lot simpler.
The sleepy cow town, Denver and Colorado, we're used to the times when people running for office didn't have to face charges for potential crimes, I guess. I don't know. Like, yeah, you would think you don't need this to be specific, but maybe there needs to be something specific in state law that says, by the way, if you're being charged with a felony or convicted of a felony in the process of running for office, you can no longer run for office.
Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Clerk Peters' allies are continuing a public pressure campaign that is aimed at law enforcement and the judicial system. When Peters was arrested last month, callers overwhelmed the Grand Junction police dispatch with angry rants. Last night, Peters' fellow conspiracy theorist, the My Pillow guy Mike Lindell, put out the phone number for the judge on the case. Court staff were getting so many calls, they changed the voicemail message.
You've reached Judge Larson's division. We are not taking any phone calls or passing along any messages regarding the Tina Peters matter. You can submit all your complaints or concerns in writing and mail them to our courthouse.
Court staff did say that most of the angry calls appeared to be coming from out of state. Election deniers turning their anger on law enforcement and the judicial system is an escalation that we've previously seen from other extremist groups. It's interesting, though, to see how quickly back the blue turned into kick the blue when Clerk Peters was arrested. How fast law and order has turned into ordering law enforcement to stand down. One of Peters' best-known allies, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's former campaign manager, Sharona Bishop, has come out and called for law enforcement officers to refuse orders related to Clerk Peters. Peters herself faces a separate criminal investigation for allegedly lying straight to a judge. Peters is headed through a criminal justice process that her allies are suggesting is illegitimate. The party of law and order until the law gave them an order. Fentanyl may have killed 3 more Coloradans all at once. Cortez police say that 3 people were found dead in a motel room last Friday. Alcohol and opioids, including fentanyl, were found in that room. 2 of the victims were members of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe from Towac. The 3rd victim was from Utah. Law enforcement still waiting for autopsies and toxicology analyses after ruling out foul play and carbon monoxide. They've zeroed in on fentanyl. So, of course, this follows the deaths of 5 people in an apparent fentanyl overdose in an apartment in Commerce City last month. It's thought that those victims believed that they were taking something else, possibly cocaine, but it was laced with fentanyl. The growing threat from that drug in Colorado is no secret at this point, though you'll still hear people suggest that this is just a city concern, a metro area concern. Anusha Roy's along now after having a discussion with the DEA about this. Anusha?
Yeah, Kyle, last time I was on this show talking about this, the message was really clear, right? You buy pills off the street. It's not going to be a pill diverted from the pharmacy. It is a pill that is manufactured by a drug cartel. And now the DEA says that list of drugs being laced with fentanyl, it just keeps getting longer.
I think there's 2 things. There has been the counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl, but what we're seeing more is the other illicit drugs, namely cocaine, heroin, meth, also laced with fentanyl.
So we've gotten this question a lot about why is fentanyl being pushed like this through Colorado? And it's honestly, it's so simple. It's about the money. So here's an example today. The DEA walked out with bags of counterfeit pills likely laced with fentanyl, cocaine and heroin. That's going to be tested as well. And the DEA says 2 out of every 5 of those pills can have enough fentanyl to kill a person. Those 3 bags alone have a retail value worth $600,000. And that was just seized. One seizure in the Denver metro area. So you think about how many people that could have killed. And so many people have died from fentanyl overdoses, but a lot of times it's happening in separate cities, it's happening across the state. So we aren't always connecting the dots on how frequently this is happening.
We're having the equivalent of a commercial airliner going down across the United States. What I mean by that is on average 285 Americans are dying a day. So this was happening all the time, but the fact that now there have been a few of these events where 3 have died, 5 have died, it's raised and struck the conscience of all of us saying, what is happening?
So we've talked about this issue before, about how it doesn't discriminate, but also think about throwing out any stereotypes of what you think a person using these drugs are going to look like, because we are now talking about people who are using pills, not necessarily needles. And a lot of times it can also be a person who uses a pill for the first time, so they don't have those signs of long-term drug use, and they use a pill that has fentanyl and then they die. So it's hard to just judge from the outside of who this is impacting. That's how widespread it is.
And my understanding of one of the reasons why this is so insidious is because it's so easy to produce, and then therefore the price point for people on the streets to get it is lower.
Yeah, so if you think about those bags of pills we just showed in that video, the DEA said one pill costs 4 cents to manufacture. By the time it gets to Denver, it's being sold for $10 a pill, right? So buying a pill for a person, there's not a huge price barrier, but there's also a huge profit to be made by the cartels itself, and that's really what's driving why we're seeing so much fentanyl showing up in Colorado.
I think people are desperate for solutions, and you'll hear people put out a lot of different things, including the idea of, well, maybe if we just went back to like 1980s style drug policy and just locked up everybody that uses drugs, maybe that would help. What do the experts on the ground say about that approach?
Yeah, so today the DEA actually talked about how their own role in how we got into this situation that pushed people towards heroin, pushed people towards drugs laced with fentanyl, and they said you can't arrest your way out of this. I mean, the drug cartels have flooded Colorado markets with fentanyl at this point. And that's why they said the approach has to be top down. It has to come from educators. It has to be talking to kids and making sure parents know what's happening, as well as legislation and, law enforcement as well.
If there's anything people grasp from this, it's in your community.
Yes.
It's in your community already. All right. Thank you, Nusha. Delco School Board was ordered to stop making secret decisions, so they're moving to give the power to one man. Xcel's daytime rate hike only applies to homes, not businesses. But this is a time when a lot of people's homes are their place of business. She's worked at MSU Denver since before it was MSU Denver.
And she just really listened to her students and really encouraged us to reach our full potential as writers.
Farewell to a founding faculty member who's helped shape students in Denver since the 60s. Next. Delco School Board got a polite request from a judge yesterday to stop doing their business in secret. So when it comes to the ongoing lawsuit against them for secret meetings, it looks like they're going to vote to put one man in charge of how to handle things. So yesterday, a judge issued a preliminary injunction against the conservative majority on the school board, saying evidence suggests that they really did decide privately they were going to fire the superintendent before they came out and did it in public. Colorado's courts have never ruled on whether so-called walking quorums are legal. Public officials meeting like one-on-one, two-on-two, that kind of thing to make decisions. The board is scheduled to vote tomorrow on whether to just put Board President Mike Peterson solely in charge of decisions about the open meetings law litigation. And since the conservatives have the majority, that's expected to pass.
One more night in the deep freeze, and then we finally break out of the frigid air mass and move into a weekend warming trend. Sunshine, we should get above freezing tomorrow and close to 70 next week ahead of the next storm. -7 this morning, the coldest low since 1960 in the month of March. And this is your high temperature map. 19 at DIA. We should be closer to 54. Storm system still bringing snow from Pueblo down to the New Mexico line, but the trend is for drier air to work in, clearing skies, light winds, and good radiational cooling, and that means another cold night. A low of -2. Tomorrow with sunshine, how about 34? 50 Saturday, close to 60 on Sunday. Daylight saving time, we move ahead 1 hour, spring forward. 70 possible Tuesday, the next storm, and chance for rain and snow the middle of next week.
We are getting some feedback tonight about businesses being exempt from Xcel Energy's daytime rate hike. We talked about how the plan to charge extra during peak weekday hours from 3 to 7 p.m. is strictly a residential thing. Businesses and manufacturers won't get charged the higher rate. A number of you, including your name Cheryl, reached out to point out that there are people like her who are working from home right now. Their home is their business. We asked Excel if there's any relief for folks like that. They tell us that a customer running a business out of the home could consider transferring to a commercial rate, but the business would have to make up at least 50% of the energy usage there. They'd also need to get a special meter for the business. They mentioned that customers can opt out of this time of use plan, the daytime rate hike, and get charged a flat rate for energy throughout the day, but there are peak times with that rate. Excel says customers won't have the opportunity to save money by shifting their energy usage off-peak.
The MSU Denver community gets ready to bid farewell to a campus original.
Meet students where they are and try to give them what they need to go a little further.
Wisdom from an educator who has 5 decades worth. Next.
In 1965, she began teaching at Metropolitan State College of Denver. Back then, it was English classes in the basements of businesses downtown. And she's continued to shape the minds of students as the college became Metro, now a university. Our photojournalist Corky Scholl sat down with one of the founding faculty members of MSU Denver. She gets set to call it a career later this year.
There are very few people in my life that I've met that are as vivid or as energetic or as passionate about teaching as Dr. Doe.
So page 1, writing students. What is working here? I've been at Metropolitan State University, Nicole, since 1965. Okay, any other questions? At that time, I was 24 years old and a part-time instructor. Is the opening sentence zingy enough to draw a reader in? Knowing students, I love knowing students. Pretty good folk are the students, and they come with interesting lives and interesting stories.
And she just really listened to her students and really encouraged us to reach our full potential as writers. And I hope that she has a lot of time to write her own stories and her own books during her retirement.
I don't know about the future. I've taught so long because there's a program here. First you retire and then you die. And I was never interested in following that program.
I would just like Dr. Doe to know how much she's touched my life. My book, Sabrina and Karina, ended up nominated for the National Book Award in 2019. And now I have a new novel coming out. And I don't think any of that would have happened if I had not studied under Dr. Doe.
Okay. Stuff that's working here, Peter? It's been really fun. I've really loved my work, and I haven't wanted to quit it. So in my secret heart of hearts, I hope the university hires me back. But they probably won't because I'm expensive by now. I was pretty cheap when they got me.
Love that. Your feedback and full disclosure, an error I made in the broadcast next. Earlier in this newscast, I mispronounced the name of the town Toyac. Thanks to everybody who correctly called me out on that, including a few of you who sent me a link to our segment from 2017 in which we explained how to pronounce the name of the town Toyac. Tex from Illinois, or at least people who grew up there. Kyle, as a born and raised Chicagoan, I was offended by your Illinois comment on tonight's show. Of course, it's true, so I can't really take too much offense. Another text, at least in Illinois, we hold our corrupt executives accountable. 3 cheers for Illinois. See you next time.